All right, let's jump right into this explainer and completely demystify the concept of good debt. We're going to do this by following the wildly different financial journeys of two guys. Let's call them Diego and Curtis. You know, if you've ever wondered why some people seem to just effortlessly build wealth while others do absolutely everything by the book and still fall behind, well, you are in the perfect place.
So let's contrast our two examples. First up, we've got Diego. Diego actually just signed papers putting himself another 200 grand in a debt, and he did it grinning like he just won the lottery. Why? Because his net worth just shot up. Then we have Curtis. Now, Curtis hasn't owed a single soul a dime in 9 years. He checks his flawless credit score religiously, but the reality? He's quietly, slowly going broke, just standing entirely still. You see, Diego didn't get rich in spite of his debt. He's getting rich specifically because of it.
The absolute crucial distinction we need to establish right out of the gate is what kind of debt we're actually talking about here. Here's the golden rule. Bad debt acts like a wealth-eating parasite. We are definitely not talking about paying 28% interest on a living room couch. If you've got that kind of debt, you need to kill it immediately. Good debt, though? Totally different animal. Good debt buys assets that appreciate or generate actual income. Simply put, bad debt drains your bank account. Good debt pays you to hold on to it.
Now, you'd probably expect the ultra-rich to be leveraged up to their eyeballs, right? Well, surprisingly, Federal Reserve statistics tell a different story. The wealthiest households actually carry proportionally way less debt, around 12% relative to their assets. Compare that to the typical middle-class family, sitting at well over 60%. The wealthy borrow less proportionally, but they get much richer doing it. Why is that? Because it's literally never about how much you borrow. It's entirely about what you aim that borrowed money at.
Let's break this down. Way 1. The real estate multiplier.
Real estate is honestly the most accessible, serious leverage a normal everyday person can get their hands on. And the math here is just absolutely fascinating. Let's walk through it. Say a property costs $250,000. If Diego pays for the whole thing in cash and the property value rises by a pretty modest 5%, he makes $12,500. That's a safe but boring 5% return. But what if Diego uses leverage? He puts only $50,000 down and lets the bank cover the rest. When the property goes up that exact same $12,500 in value, Diego gets to keep 100% of that appreciation. Against his actual $50,000 out-of-pocket investment, that translates to a massive 25% return on his cash. He just multiplied his return by 5 using the bank's money.
Oh, and it actually gets better. This leads us right into a method real estate investors call BRRR. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Diego buys a beat-up place, fixes it up, and gets a renter in there. Then he refinances against the newly improved, higher value of the property. And because a loan isn't classified as income, he pulls his original $50,000 out completely tax-free. He then turns around and recycles that exact same cash to buy a second house and then a third. While Curtis is out there spending his entire life saving up to buy just one single rental in cash, Diego is literally building an empire using the exact same initial down payment on a loop.
Moving on to way 2. Buying a business. Now, we definitely have to acknowledge the sobering reality here. Roughly half of all businesses fail within 5 years. But even with that risk, this mechanism still mints everyday millionaires constantly. Look, most people think you have to start a business completely from scratch and eat nothing but ramen for 4 straight years. You absolutely don't. Using small business administration loans, Diego can buy a boring, totally unglamorous, already profitable business, say a laundromat earning $200,000 a year, for a purchase price of $800,000. He only needs a 10% down payment, which is $80,000. He borrows the rest. And here's the absolute magic of this. The business's own profit pays back the debt. Diego eventually owns an $800,000 cash printing machine outright, and it only costs him a tenth of the sticker price.
Next up, way 3. Buy, borrow, die.
Okay, this is the strategy the ultra-wealthy lean on the absolute hardest to dodge massive tax bills. The crucial point really comes down to this comparison. Let's say Diego has a $5 million stock portfolio, and $4 million of that is pure profit. Selling that stock to get cash would cost him nearly $1 million in capital gains taxes alone. No thanks. Instead, he just borrows $3 million against it at a 6% interest rate. He pays $180,000 in interest instead of $950,000 in taxes. And remember, he gets to spend that loan completely tax-free because borrowed money is not income, all while his original $5 million just sits in the market continuing to grow. Finally, when he passes away, a legal rule called the step-up in basis comes in and wipes out the capital gains tax for his heirs entirely. Boom, the slate is wiped clean.
But hey, let's take a breath, because we really have to acknowledge the serious risks here. Leverage is absolutely a knife that cuts in both directions. If you try this stock strategy and the market suddenly crashes, the value of your collateral drops. The bank is going to issue a margin call, basically demanding its money back immediately, and that forces you to sell your assets at the exact worst possible moment. For the rich, selling is a last resort. Borrowing is always the first move. But make no mistake, that move has teeth.
All right, Way 4, arbitrage and inflation.
This is a trick lots of people actually do by accident without ever fully understanding it. Let's look at this comparison. Curtis hurled every spare dollar he could scrounge up at his 3% fixed mortgage because he was taught that all debt is inherently bad. Diego, on the other hand, keeps that cheap 3% loan, takes his spare cash, and invests it directly into the stock market, which historically returns around 10%. Diego is just effortlessly pocketing that 7-point spread. It's practically free money on paper.
And honestly, here is my favorite fact about this whole strategy. Inflation actually quietly pays off your debt for you. Seriously, think about a fixed $2,000 monthly mortgage. In year one, making that payment hurts. But 30 years later, your salary has gone up, rents have gone up, the price of literally everything has gone up. But that mortgage payment, it's sitting there frozen in time. Every single year, it gets noticeably easier to cover. You're repaying tomorrow's expensive loan with money that just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. Inflation literally transfers wealth directly from the lender right to the borrower, melting that debt down like an ice sculpture at a summer wedding.
Moving on to Way 5, the tax code's hidden rewards.
You know, the system doesn't even try to hide this, but very few people fully utilize how the tax code openly encourages and actually rewards productive borrowing. Just look at how the IRS treats our two guys. When Curtis pays interest on his financed pickup truck, he eats that cost all by himself. It is 0% deductible. But when Diego pays interest on his rental property, he deducts it. Plus, he gets to claim this wild phantom expense called depreciation. The government literally lets him deduct a chunk of the building's value every single year as if it's wearing out and breaking down, even though the market value is actually going up. In a 30% tax bracket on a $275,000 building, Diego saves roughly $6,000 a year that the government just simply doesn't collect from him.
Which brings us to Way 6, using other people's money.
This one is less of a specific tactic and more the foundational mindset beneath this entire playbook. This concept of leverage, of using OPM, other people's money, applies beautifully to almost anything. It's borrowing $40,000 to get a nursing credential that genuinely lifts your salary by $30,000 a year for the rest of your career. It's using seller financing to take over a small business, paying the old owner directly out of the ongoing profits so there isn't even a bank in the room. Or maybe it's franchise loans, or taking out credit lines for heavy equipment that earns you way more than it costs to finance. It wears a different costume every time, but it's the exact same underlying idea.
Listen, if you take away just one single sentence from this entire explainer to ask yourself while you're standing there in the checkout line, this is it. Is this borrowed money buying me an asset or a liability? Is what I'm buying about to put money into my pocket or pull it out? That boat you've been eyeing? Huge liability. That luxury watch? Liability. But a duplex or a profitable local business? Those are assets. Answering this first question correctly decides almost everything about your financial future.
Now for the reality check. 4 survival rules.
Look, Curtis's paralyzing fear of debt isn't entirely unjustified. The guy actually went bankrupt back in his 20s from messing around with real estate leverage. So to stay completely out of the financial wreckage and safely on Diego's side of the ledger, good debt absolutely requires 4 strict conditions. Number 1, the spread must be real, meaning the asset actually has to out-earn the loan. 2, the asset has to appreciate or produce cash flow. 3, the leverage has to be survivable with a decent cushion, so a bad year just bends you instead of completely snapping you in half. And 4, you have to be able to make those payments through the rough patches, because the loan never ever sleeps. If you miss even one of these, your brilliant leverage quickly turns right back into the bad debt that will absolutely destroy you.
So let's look at where our two guys finally end up. By the end of the line, Curtis guarded his money so intensely safely that inflation actually shrank its purchasing power. Sure, he's got a paid-off house and flawless credit, but he quietly got lapped by the math. Diego, though, he aimed his instincts entirely at assets. He retired early at 50, with massive equity spread across 6 properties and a business that just runs itself without him. He turned that single original $50,000 down payment into an absolute empire.
And that brings us to the ultimate realization of this whole thing. Debt is simply a tool. In the wrong hands, it eats you alive. But in the right hands, aimed at the right things, it is an incredibly powerful cheat code. Leaving us to really wonder, which path are you choosing for your own future? Are you just avoiding debt to feel safe, or are you ready to aim it strategically to build true, lasting wealth?